So I was in a real dark hole. I was taking drugs and then sleeping tablets during the week. And this went on for years. It wasn't something that was just that year. It dragged on, and we looked back and thinking, my sister and I, we're having a good time, getting on, partying. But it was just a real coping mechanism. It was trying to hide from the pain of losing footy, losing dad, and using drugs and alcohol and sleeping tablets to do it. Where now I know there's a lot better ways, that not just masking the pain, rather than not hiding it and just trying to make yourself feel better. Losing Shane only just over 2 years ago, I sort of look back on the things that helped me after Dad passed, and I know it was like a couple of years of dark times, but it was about being around people that inspire you, people like yourself, starting an online business, and just being around passionate people again. I think your environment sort of can dictate your mood, and you've heard the saying, you're the average of the 5 people you hang around most, and not that I was hanging around bad people, but I wasn't hanging around inspiring people. And as you said, passion and purpose is when you're getting out of bed and you're excited to wake up. Where I had a couple of years there, I was getting out of bed, I was like, I just want to go back to bed, I want to sleep, or I just don't want to, I didn't want to get out of bed because I had no passion or drive to get up. So so the time that it took me, it took me months just being around good people, getting back into my fitness, and having a drive to for life again, I suppose.
This podcast is set out for anyone that's ready to make change in their life. It's all about inspiration, education, inspirational stories, diving deep into the journeys that people have got, incredible entrepreneurial journey, people that are out there making stuff happen.
Okay, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the One Shot Movement podcast, where we dive deep into the stories of entrepreneurs, business people, sports stars, really anyone that's out there making it happen. Today, we have a very good friend of mine. His name is Stephen Baker. For those that follow AFL, or Australian Rules Football, we have a lot of international guests that follow us. It's our signature code. But for those that do follow the sport, he is someone that's played over 200 games, best and fairest, played in 3 grand finals. He was a revered figure for the St Kilda Football Club, and he's been a good friend of mine for the best part of 2 decades. So we're going to dive into his football story, his journey, take a few key lessons, and welcome to the show, Steve.
Thanks, Craig. Amazing introduction, and glad to be on.
Good. I always like to, I do an intro, but I always like each guest just to provide a bit more context to their story of, where you are to get to today. So spend a few minutes going over your story.
Yeah, so I'm a country boy, grew up in a little town called Colac. I was a basketball lover, so I didn't grow up playing football. So we lived on 14 acres, so, with the motorbikes and, an older brother, younger sister, and loved my basketball. It turned out I wasn't that good and I couldn't make the under 16 squad. And turned to footy at about age 15 and played under 17s and then played in a senior premiership with my brother, 1997, South Colac Kangaroos. And made my way into scraped into the Geelong Falcons, and the rest is history. So I think you'll probably ask questions about the story in a bit more depth, but that's the basics of it.
Yeah, look, I mean, okay, so you pick up football at the best part of 15. Basketball was your, I guess, chosen sport. That's a pretty quick rise into to the AFL when you get drafted, usually as an 18-year-old. So what was a key moment there for you to be able to get identified? You obviously weren't in a junior talent program prior to that, which often people are. What happened to get you your first contract?
Well, I was playing for South Colac, and all the locals said, if you want to play in the best under 18s competition and play for the Geelong Falcons, you must play for Colac. But I had no aspirations of playing in the AFL. I just wanted to play with my brother, win a premiership, and that was about my footy dream. Just playing with my brother and having fun. So we got in the grand final. I played really well in the grand final, kicked a couple of goals, which was unlike me, and got invited to try out for the Geelong Falcons, and didn't think I had any chance of making it because my skills were terrible. So I went to the tryouts, and I got told by the coach think after the first couple of sessions that, look, we love your tenacity, we love your effort, but we don't think you're good enough. Your skills you're not up to scratch to make the team. And got invited to play in one last practice match, and I said, "Oh, you can come down and play and fill in the numbers." And I went and played that game and just had a crack. I went out there. I always pride myself on effort, so I just put in a good game. I had about 15 or 16 tackles, and basically at the end of the game, the coach said to the manager said that he was the one that didn't want me in the team, but Brian Cordy, thankfully for him, he said, "Look, I want this kid in the team just because of the effort that he's put in this game." And scraped into the Geelong Falcons. I was working at a timber mill in Colac, Shelton's Timber, while I was playing in the Falcons and not getting a game all year. So sitting on the bench, nearly quit 3 or 4 times. My dad talked me out of it one time, and it was a couple of weeks before the finals, and I thought, I'm going to play out the rest of the season and go back and play at South Colac, because I was just sitting on the bench, working 9 to 5 at a timber mill, going down to train Tuesday, Thursday, absolutely wrecked each week. My brother said I was the grumpiest little person in the world back then, and not a joy to be around. And but long story short, it was a couple of weeks before the Falcons finals. I remember the coach saying to me, "Look, Steve, we love your tenacity, but you can't kick. Every time you get a kick, you kick it out in the full, but you reckon you can stop someone for us?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, there was a guy that was averaging 40 possessions, and he goes, 'If you stop this guy, we'll give you the game ball.'" And I remember thinking, holy crap, I'm going to get I could win the game ball, and I couldn't afford football at the time. And went out there and gave that kid hell. Steve Hazelman was his name. Hope he doesn't hold a grudge, but did all the dirty tactics under the sun. He walked off the ground pretty injured. I got my game ball, and that's where I think the pivotal moment. My tagging was born. I went into the finals as a tagger, taking on the opposition's best players, and right place at the right time on the grand final day for the Falcons. I was tagged. I can't remember the guy who was tagging, but the St Kilda recruiter, John Beveridge, was in the stands. He was probably there to watch the player that I was playing on getting towed around. But I just had one of those games where the ball was bouncing my way. I'd handball it, so I didn't want to kick it to let the team down with my poor kicking. But I had something like 20 handballs, and every time my opponent got the ball, I was perfect spot to smash him. And just played a really good game. And I had an undercut and a ponytail. I was a bit of a rough-looking guy, and the security recruiter and Tim Watson had a chat about it. I said, "Who is this guy that keeps getting the football?" And obviously that was me, and they were the only club that showed interest. The St Kilda, their tagger was just retiring, I think, that year, so I was in the right place at the right time. So I sort of put it down to not giving up, always giving 100% effort. And you don't know, if you don't give 100% effort, you've got no chance of finding out what your potential is. And I could have easily given up a few times, but just pretty proud that I stuck with it and ended up playing 12 years at the Saints.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is what life is about, is actually capitalizing on one shots. Your next story was nearly your one shot where you gave it away. You actually got drafted. You made it all the way to the big smoke, and a big night out nearly cost you your opportunity at your 12 years. You wanted to share that story just briefly?
Wow,
yeah. How sliding doors moments can be good and bad too.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, I sort of had no aspirations of playing in the AFL. So when I got there, I was a bit not overwhelmed, but I couldn't believe that I got drafted. I remember laying on the couch when I got drafted, thinking I'm never a chance to get it. I might get picked 90, and I had a few mates there, and I was on the couch and I was half asleep, and then all of a sudden I look up and my name was on the screen, and then my mates are jumping on me, and it was just a whirlwind of a couple of months, and then all of a sudden I'm down running next to Robert Harvey. I wasn't a massive footy fan, but I knew who these guys were. But the night before that, we had training on the Saturday morning. We went down there on the Friday night. We met a few of the players, and not my proudest moment, Craig. But went out, drank the night before training. I got mixed up with Barry Hall and Austin Jones. A couple of the troublemakers took me under their wing, and they ended up giving me fireball shots and this and that. And training in the morning, it was just meant to be a meeting and meet and greet, but it was a surprise training session at 7 a.m. I woke up at 9 a.m. My bed was fully wet. Was bringing back childhood memories. I used to wet the bed, but apparently it was Barry that threw a bucket of water on me in the morning. Could not wake me up. I crashed at his place, and I literally dragged myself there. I think I got there at about 11. I couldn't work out where it was. My phone was flat. It was just a horrific morning, and I thought, I'm going to rock up. The coach is going to yell at me, but everyone had gone. It was 4 hours later, and the big fish, he was a big sort of, I think he was Russian, and he was the fitness guy. He said, "Come with me, Steve." He goes, "Tim doesn't want to see you until Monday or talk to you, and I've got you for 4 hours." And it was just the most grueling 4 hours of sit-ups, and I remember throwing up in the gym. And I literally I was staying with a host family about 200 meters from the club, and I lived home. I was just, it was just leg work, gut work, sprinting laps, going back in the gym. It was just, so that was my initiation to AFL. And then I remember rocking up on the Monday. Tim Watson wouldn't look at me all training session. I just wanted to get it over with. I wanted him to yell at me and get it over with. And it was at the end of training session. And he said to Barry and Austin, he goes, "If you guys play up like that again, you're in the twos. And effing Baker, if you do that again, you're on the first train back to Colac, and get an effing haircut." So I don't know if you can clip one of you with my hair and show my haircut here, but I had a rotten looking head on me. And so I went home, shaved my head that night, and rocked up the next day, front and center, and trying to get back in the good book. So it was a rough start to the AFL, but I made it through, so it was okay.
And look, I mean, let's that's a bit of a jovial story to enter, but you actually then, with a group of players come through together, and you build a team that grew fast, and a couple of coach changes, and 2004 you were like really amongst the challenging. And what a story of in the preliminary final, and Fraser Gehrig, who was one of the best forwards, is kicking 100 goals in the preliminary final. And often here, when you're out there doing the circuit, you do share a lot of your funny stories, but not too many people probably talk about this one that often. Do you want to share what happened preliminary final against Port Adelaide when Gary kicked his 100?
Yeah, it was, we just had all the momentum. I can't remember, I've got a shocking memory, but I remember we were just on a roll. Fraser kicked his 100th, and we just had them on toast. But then the crowd rushed onto the ground, and I'm there just, get off the ground, because we had all the momentum. It was just, I'm not going to say it cost us the game, but then all of a sudden, my old man loves having a drink, and him and Mum had a bit of a crack that day. So Greggy was out on the ground, got a bit of a pat on the ass. "Come on, Stevie, fire up, yeah, mate." And he's had a go. And I look at him, he's like laughing his head off. So it was like such a moment where you're so in tune in with the game, but then you got your old man, and it sort of made me smile a bit. And so I don't know if that ruined the momentum. The Saints getting on the ground. I think we lost by less than a goal. I think we had if we had a kick, we had a few chances in the last quarter, but Mum and Dad used to love going to watch the football. I think that the next day they drove all the way home and watched my sister in the grand final, and Dad dressed up in a leotard dress, and did a run out in halftime. My sister's grand final as well. So it was good. Mum, Dad loved their footy. It was a bit of a funny story. I won't say Dad cost us the game, but it was a great moment.
Yeah, look, we do see in football now, momentum is everything, and you did have momentum and you lose by less than a goal, and things like that can happen. It's very rare too for those listeners. 100 goals probably happens once in every 10 years now. It hasn't happened for 15 years. So to get the crowd to run onto the ground in a serious final is pretty remarkable. So you're probably a little bit unlucky there. You probably should have said to Fraser, just pass them all off, maybe. That might have been the plan.
Might have helped. It would have been good if he kicked it in the last quarter, not so early when we had all the momentum. But a lot of would have, should have, could have, as my mum says, looking back at all these footy games.
Yeah, well, like while we're on that topic, the woulda, shoulda, couldas is really, you are a very revered figure for St Kilda. Your opposition fans or not so fans would go, "Oh, Stevie Baker was just a tagger. He was a thug. He used to just whack people. His best things he could do is get suspended." But you were a serious player who won best and fairest, 200 games at 3 grand finals. You had woulda, coulda, shoulda moments by playing in a drawn grand final in front of 100,000 people. Do you want to share a bit about that experience?
Yeah, it was obviously there's talk about the bounce. Milne had the bad bounce, and I don't know whether the Rewalt tackle in the first opening minute, but it was. I just remember after that game, I didn't know if there was time on. I hadn't I looked at the rules on what happened in that, but it was just a gutting feeling. Because obviously the lead up was so big. We did play the 2009 grand final, but against Collingwood, it was just huge. I remember, doing the carnival thing, and everything was just such a build up. So to have the draw and have to come back the next week, it was pretty, I won't say emotional, but it was just, everyone was so drained. I don't know if we were probably a bit of an older team. And I remember on the Thursday after training, going into the following game, the rematch, I just looked around and I saw, Lenny Hayes had 3 ice packs on. Rewalt's getting his knee drained next to me, getting my foot, and I'd had a plate put in my foot, and I was just thinking, geez, I hope people aren't as feeling as bad as me. But then looking around, seeing our stars, just no one was talking, no one was smiling, thinking, geez. But yeah, credit to Collingwood, they came out and just absolutely whopped us the following game. But the drawn grand final was. It was special to be a part of, but I wish we had the time on rule, because I think another 5 minutes each way. I watched the end of it for the first time, and I couldn't believe it was in our forward line. I couldn't remember any of the game; it was all a blur. But Cozzy missed a mark, and obviously there was a lot of things that happened in that draw that you think, geez, you got woulda, shoulda, coulda, but sadly we didn't get there.
And very similar to running onto the ground, like a drawn grand final based on that experience doesn't exist anymore, and they will have time on and not replay the game. So you got stiff twice there, my friend. So
thanks for bringing it up, mate.
But look, I mean, you mentioned that the plate in the foot, and you had an interesting season to say the least. You'd been suspended for a serious amount of time for one of the most famous stories in your career is the battle with you and Steve Johnson. And you also had a bowling ball incident. And you want to just...
I've only just recently released that, but
do you want to just share a little bit about that to provide some, context to the audience, in particular our fans from overseas?
Yeah, so Stevie Johnson and he was one of the star players for the Cats. We played in the 2009 grand final, and I got the better of him. I don't think he'd had a possession at 3/4 time, and I was a bit of a smart ass and said, look, as we're walking back to our huddles at 3/4 time, I said, you're not going to win the Norm Smith today, buddy, and give him a little elbow. And he just looked at me like he wanted to kill me. And obviously they got the last laugh because they won the grand final. I think it was a draw with a couple of minutes to go, and then they kicked a couple of late with a little toe poke. But word got around that he wanted to get me the next time we played. I wanted to get him. I wanted to get him again, and it got in the media. Like I must have shared something that got caught up, and so word got around. And I remember the coach saying to me, "You want him again?" I said, "Yeah, I want him. I want him again." And it was just on. So it was just a regular season game, but it was before the bounce. I had a few little dirty tactics where I thought I want to hurt him, but I don't want to get reported. So I had one where it was a jumper punch where I'd grab him and sort of just stick him in the neck with my fingers. So I couldn't get him. I didn't want to get him high. I had all these little things I was going to do. Stepping on his feet. I'd sharpened my stops, which don't recommend that to any kids out there. Stepping on his feet, whacking the back of his elbow. So I didn't plan to actually go out there and punch him in the head, but it really just eventuated. He got me a ripper early on. He gave me a big backhander, and it hit me right in the hard spot. I've got a very hard head, and if that had been 2 inches lower, he would have just obliterated my nose. But that was in the first quarter, and I thought, geez, he means business. He's throwing some cut lunches here with some power, and it rocked me a little bit. And I saw red when he hit me first, and I gave him a few little uppercuts. Nothing nothing silly, but when he actually hit me that hard on the head, he broke his hand, and I saw him reaching for his hand and rubbing it, and I just, I'm like, he's injured. I'm going to attack that hand. So there's a lot of footage of me just whacking his broken hand all game. And actually, the AFL changed the rule because of me. You're not allowed to attack an injured player now. So I did get a rule change in the AFL. But yeah, that game ended. I think I got reported 4 times. But a story I did love about Stevie, what I heard after was, he knew his hand was broken because he had to get it jabbed at halftime. And he went up to his club doctor at 3/4 time and he goes, yeah, my hand's stuffed. How long am I going to miss with a broken hand? And he said, it's going to be 4 or 5 weeks. And apparently he looked over at me and he goes, I'm going to get that little baker bastard or whatever. Well, you are probably said something a little bit worse than that. But and he went out there, and that's still the best hit that I got over my 12 years. I was standing behind him in their forward line, and the ball was coming down. I was pulling his underarm hairs out and whacking him in the back of the elbow, doing all my dirty tricks, not expecting this massive elbow. So he's pretty quick. He just went bang and just elbowed me and split me open, 8 stitches. My eye puffed up. I couldn't see out of my eye for a week. But yeah, that's probably one of my best battles. He was my favourite player after that. So I love players that gave it back to me. I think I always played better when I was more physical. But yeah, it was one of the battles that still gets talked about today. So it was a good one. But I think I got 12 weeks, but with 9 with an early plea, and he only got 3. I said after the game, I'll look after you at the tribunal, Stevie. Don't worry, mate. I've got your back. Players code. But then I ended up getting 9, and he got 3. And yeah, so with your second question about the foot, the bowling ball incident, when you're suspended. So I got 9 weeks, which was would have been, I think, a week before the grand final. But that week, the week that I got suspended, you're not allowed to drink. But I'd had a few drinks, and we're playing indoor bowls, and it was just a harmless little. It was like a white. I picked up the white ball, and to kick it down the other end, I kicked it, and I must have snapped my second toe a little bit. And then on Monday at training, I didn't want to say that I'd kicked the bowling ball, and yeah, that training session, it's my toe. I got through the whole training session, but I'm not sure exactly when it happened, but it snapped my second toe all the way through. So I've been suspended for 9 weeks. I'd broken my toe, so I've had to go get an operation straight away, put a plate my toe. So I was in a moon boot for a couple of weeks. But I remember just thinking, I'm gonna, I was an idiot, but I just remember thinking I'm just going to do anything I can to get myself in shape, and if the boys make the finals, to get back in. So I was doing training 2 or 3 times a day. I was doing the extra on the grinding machine and stuff, for 3 or 4 hours a day, and got myself in position. And Ross Lyon, he had the faith in me to put me in for the grand final. And obviously it would have been a great story if we had won and not the draw. It would have been a great comeback story, but sadly, fell short and didn't get there. But yeah, a story that not too many people know about behind the scenes.
And just on that too, while you're talking about battles, and a lot of players have long-term battles, you probably, as one of the leading taggers in the competition, you actually were often assigned to the best players. And at the time, the best midfielders getting around was Gary Ablett Jr., Chris Judd, obviously Stevie J, who you're on. Do you want to just share with the audience who was the hardest person to play on, and anything you could say about, you did get the better of Gary early on, and then he became one of the best players of all time. Just share that.
Yeah, there was a few people, like Ben Cousins was one that just keeps popping in my head. I remember he wasn't so physical. It was just, he just ran and ran. We called it gut running. So he would run the whole length of the ground, and just, and he was fast. So he'd lose you by 10 meters, get to the other end, and then there'd be a turnover, and then he'd just sprint the other way. And I think it was like 18 kilometers. I think we had the GPS trackers, and that was in one game, chasing his ass around. And yeah, then the other players you mentioned, Gary Ablett, I sort of got the better of him early, but then, he turned into an absolute gun midfielder. I think I got him when he was on the forward flanker a bit. So there was a lot of work that went into tagging. It wasn't just turn up and mindless, get towed around. So I studied each player. I did hours of video work. So that the ablets, I'd sort of he would skirt around the back, so I'd try and keep him away from the packs a little bit. But Chris Judd, he attacked the pack, so I'd sort of try and push him into congestion and do little dirty tactics and put his timing off because he was so perfect at just reading the ball. So when the ball's getting bounced up, I'd whack him in the guts a little bit or stand on his foot or push him off balance. So all the players were different to play on. But I think Ben Cousins, just because he ran me to death one day. Gary Hocking, Buddha Hocking, my first ever tagging role, he was walked up and just open hand me straight in the nose and was like, welcome to the AFL. He said something like that, and I couldn't see for like 5 minutes. But then I kicked 2 goals on him and shut him up. And there's lots of different battles, and everyone was different, but it was good.
Any truth to I think one of your last contracts that Chris Judd was trying to get you to come to Carlton?
Oh, I think that was a rumor that I think he was, because I did get offered a contract, and I think he did put his hand up and say, let's get him here so I don't have to play on him. But that was just a rumor, Craig. I can't go out spreading those things. That was just what I heard. But it was the only time that I got tempted to go somewhere else. When Carlton, I think St Kilda offered me a 3-year deal and then took it off the table. So they had it on the table. And we'll give Bakes 2. He's not going anywhere because they saw me as loyal. And my manager said, no, let's explore options. And I said, you can go and explore, but I'm not leaving. But then all of a sudden, Carlton have offered me 3 years and over $1 million, and I just went. It was over twice as amount of what the Saints were doing, and they'd sort of taken a year off the table. But so I am a loyal person, but that one did. Prick my ears up a little bit, thinking little kid from Colac, and then you got $1 million sort of sitting in front of you. It did make me look sideways a little bit for a split second, but then St Kilda came back, gave me my 3 years, not quite anywhere near $1 million, but I'm happy to be a one club player now.
Yeah, look, I want to move and shift gears a little bit because you had a phenomenal career. And then you got the curveball, like the sack, effectively really caught you blindsided, really. And that was, I want to get you to explain that situation of getting caught blindsided. But for you were a 17, 18-year-old kid from the country moving to the big smoke and then having a full career. And that was sort of your life. So when your whole life just gets flipped on its head like that, we'll move into some of the situations after that. But what happened for that I guess that surprise sacking?
Yeah, well, I talked to Ross Lyon because it was about round 11, and I remember I'd beaten my opponent convincingly that week, and we'd had a good win. And I got a tap on the shoulder. It was one of the fitness guys said, Ross wants to see you in his office after training. And I'm thinking I'm going to get a pat on the back. I played a great game. I hadn't been beaten all year. It turned out I was coming second in the best and fairest at the time. So I was thinking I'm playing the best footy I've played for 5 or 6 years. And, I'm going to get a contract extension. Went up to the office and Ross said, look, folks, I'm going to be blunt, straight out. We're not going to go with you next year. So we just want to tell you early so you can prepare, life after football. And I laughed. I was like, what do you really want to say, mate? I'm still thinking I'm going to get a pat on the back. And he goes, no, we're serious. He blamed the football staff or some football new manager that we had, that they were restructuring and getting rid of the old guys. And my heart, I remember thinking, my mum and dad are going to be shattered that they can't come to the footy anymore. Then I'm thinking, shit, I've just bought my first house. How am I going to pay for that? And I remember I didn't want to tell anyone. I was just laying in bed that night, and just my whole life has just flipped on its head, in a split second. So it was sort of went into a bit of panic. I couldn't sleep that night. I still hadn't told mum and dad, hadn't told any of the boys, and just absolute shattered, gutted, and really panic about what I was going to do life after football. And I didn't use a lot of the resources that the AFLPA offered up. Everything's on a platter while you're playing. Business courses, you can do but I hadn't really set myself up. You and I were doing an online business, but it was real panic stations for me, and it did knock me for six for months. And yeah, then the following year, I had a contract. I wasn't signed, but I was going to go to GWS and play a backline role and be a sort of a mentor to the backline there. Stephen Silvani had me a role there, but then a couple of old players, I think Luke Power and Corns, and you could only have two retirees, or I can't remember what they called them, but two older players coming in. So I took my spot. So then I'm sort of left, and then I'm playing at Craigieburn in the middle of nowhere. So I went from a team that was driven, waking up in the morning and striving to win a grand final, to a team that's, no offense to Craigieburn, but we didn't win a game. It was, it was all about partying on the weekends, and so it was like a whirlwind coming into the AFL, and it was just like the same going out. I'm, nearly playing in a premiership, and then all of a sudden I'm, sitting there in the rain in Craigieburn, getting ready for the drive home after another loss. So it was it was a tough time.
Yeah, look, and I mean, we see this happen with not only AFL players. I mean, you've got some really close friends that you played careers with that their life spiraled out of control straight after football as well. But you see it so often that, your life was nearly structured. It was planned nearly session by session, what you were eating, everything, and for longevity for over a decade. And there needs to be more work, I think, in that space, certainly from an AFL, because the mental health issues that people are coming out with are quite. And for you, like, I remember doing some travel with you. You hadn't even booked your own flight before. Like, Craig, I want to come to Queensland, but where do I buy these flights? So in all seriousness, like, there's some work that needs to be done for, let's say, career people that go from school into 30 years of age without, really looking after themselves.
Yeah, no, 100%. Because I know after sort of going through working at a timber mill to the AFL, I'd never done a tax return before, and the AFL, that you had a manager that did it all. And when I got the ask from footy, I'm just thinking, oh, these tax returns are magically done. So I'm 5 years down the track and I haven't done a tax return. I get this big bill, and it's like, oh shit, welcome to the real world kind of thing. I don't think it's the fault of the AFLPA. Obviously, you do get offered things, but when you're thinking your career is going to last forever, but I think the statistics actually say the average AFL player only lasts 2 or 3 years. But when you've played for that that long, and you're thinking you're going to get another 2 or 3 years, we'll worry about life after football later. So when it's sort of the rug's pulled out, I thought, if I'll get another 2 years, then I'll worry about life after football. But because it happened so fast, I think it knocked me for six a little bit more than what it would have if I lasted another 2 years. So it was hard to take.
I want to move into an area of, for you, you're a family man. I knew your dad and brother quite well, and your mum, and you're in a dark despair in a way, and then not long after you get sacked, you lose nearly your best friend, your dad. Just talk through that situation, but where did you go from in a darkness point of view? Because I want to sort of move into getting out of that type of situation.
Yeah, well, that was it was in the first season at Craigieburn, and then I was already in a bit of a downward spiral, because I think going from the AFL, you're waking up, as you said, with structure, and you're around passionate people, and you've got a goal. Where I lost passion for sort of getting out of bed, and I wasn't enjoying the football because you're there, we're losing every week. So I sort of lost my joy for football, and just going through the motions. And then when Dad sort of passed, that would happen really quickly, because I think Dad didn't want to show he was sick, and I remember came to a few games at Craigieburn. He didn't have the sort of light in his eyes that he did back in the St Kilda when he'd be there, and him and Mum would just love it, and their just eyes would light up. So when he dragged himself to a few Craigieburn games, and then all of a sudden he starts getting sick, and then within 2 weeks, we're sort of holding his hand, watching him take his last breath. So it was like I was already in a downward spiral, and then that was like, oh shit. So then I I started, getting on the drinks, and I got onto the drugs every Saturday. We went back to my place. I think I was earning $1,500 a week at Craigieburn, and that was just going to buy drugs and alcohol. And then it was a party at mine, and then it was every Saturday, Sunday, and some Monday. So it was. I remember talking to my sister, and she was at a few of the parties. She was in a very dark space herself, looking back. And when I share my story recently, I've got some photos. Back in the day, I just looked like a different person because I got that in that dark. I remember waking up. I laugh about it now, but waking up on the couch, and I'd wet the couch. There's people sleeping at my property, and then I thought, geez, I flipped the couch mattress, and then I went to bed, and I'd wet the bed as well. So I wet the bed, went to the couch. So I was in a real dark hole. I was taking drugs and then sleeping tablets during the week, and this went on for years. It wasn't something that was just that year. It dragged on, and we looked back and thinking, my sister and I, we're having a good time, getting on, partying, but it was just a real coping mechanism. It was trying to hide from the pain of losing footy, losing dad, and using drugs and alcohol and sleeping tablets to do it. Where now I know there's a lot better ways, that not just masking the pain, rather than not hiding it, just trying to make yourself feel better.
So we're going to dedicate a whole episode because we really need to dive into this BuildGrit concept and resilience and everything. But from just being one of your closest friends, I actually noticed a turning point with you when you started doing some online businesses, and you started, Bakerland, and, you were playing cards with your best mate, Shane Warne, and, you sort of had a bit of purpose and a bit of structure and something to get up for. And so it's sort of like a combination between having a reason to do something and also a community. Would you sort of, elaborate on your time to rebound out of that darkness?
Yeah, I think the theme, like losing Shane only just over 2 years ago, I sort of look back on the things that helped me after Dad passed, and I know it was like a couple of years of dark times, but it was about being around people that inspire you, people like yourself, starting an online business, and just being around passionate people again. I think your environment sort of can dictate your mood, and you've heard the saying, you're the average of the 5 people you hang around most. And not that I was hanging around bad people, but I wasn't hanging around inspiring people. And as you said, passion and purpose is when you're getting out of bed and you're excited to wake up. Where I had a couple of years there, I was getting out of bed, and I was like, I just want to go back to bed. I want to sleep, or I just don't want to. I didn't want to get out of bed because I had no passion or drive to get up. Yeah, so it took me months just being around good people, getting back into my fitness, and having a drive to for life again, I suppose.
And you did, that was a good phase for a period. I used to, let's touch on, one of the greatest sports people Australia's ever had, but he's one of the St Kilda's biggest fans as well. And I remember just, as a close friend of yours, nearly living the life of Shane Warne through your lens, because, you were somebody traveling the world to poker tournaments. Every Friday night, you'd be in the basement, you'd be having New Year's Eve parties. You were, you started a business together that didn't get off the ground partially due to the timing, but, you had a collagen product and all sort of stuff ready to roll. Do you want to touch on, all of a sudden life is bloody good again?
Yeah, well, that was the thing. It's after losing Dad, it took years to sort of get back and be excited to back into life again. And then I think I remember saying to Warnie a couple of weeks before he passes, that this is going to be the best year of our lives, because we'd had 3 trips booked. We're going to go to Vegas. We'd had a golf trip. We had a month in Queensland. We we're going to stay at a beach house. So it was like every day was just exciting, being his good mate. So yeah, it was a similar time. It was you've just built back up to enjoying life again, getting out of bed with passion and purpose. But then all of a sudden, you lose one of your best mates, and then you're waking up going, having that business that I was so excited about. We'd catch up every day, and we were planning holidays, and planned to do a business together. And so it was a very similar feeling of back when Dad passed. So that's something, I was in a dark hole for 6 or 12 months, and I remember being New Year's. Went down to Sorrento. I got invited by his son Jackson, and I was miserable, and I remember I had a cry at 12 o'clock, and giving Jackson a hug, and then waking up the next morning. It was and I had a flat tire in my car, and I just remember thinking, I just couldn't care if I got hit by a truck driving back that day. But then something sort of clicked inside, and I was thought, Jackson had been living he was been inspiring for his family, and he'd been off the drink and using it as fitness, and he's looking at what his dad would have wanted him to be doing, and that's having fun, doing the things that he enjoyed, poker, traveling, and having a good time. So I thought, I was meant to be Jackson's sort of role model, and I just flicked the switch, and sort of thought I'm going to get back in my fitness. Teamed up with a few mates. I had a mate that was wanting to catch up for a coffee, Matty Ferg, and he was trying to get me back into fitness, and messaged him and asked for a bit of a hand with the fitness, and then we went on our first run, and that sort of led into another run and booking in for a half Ironman. So I was in a real sort of miserable state. I'd had a hip replacement, and having a bit of a pity party about Warnie, and I probably stayed inside for about 6 months, not wanting to go anywhere. One of my other best mates took me to Vegas, and I was miserable. I think I sat in my room most of the time and ate room service and watched movies. So I think the theme was, after Dad, was being around positive people and using fitness. I remember I did a 24-hour Tough Mudder back years after Dad passed, but that sort of snapped me out of it. And so that's what I signed up to do, a half Ironman, which led to a full Ironman in December, which has led to me wanting to tell my story of the dark places, and that led to starting the BuildGrit, where I'm doing some talks on building mental toughness, resilience. I know we're doing another episode on that, but the theme was getting through dark times is just being around positive people and having a purpose, having something to aim for or strive for, I suppose, sort of helps you get out of bed.
Look, I always say to people, and you and I have done a few talks together as well, where, it's not a matter of if a challenge, adversity happens. It's a matter of when, how big, how often, but most importantly, how you deal with it. And you've sort of been to two real highs, like the glitz and glamour of the Shane Warne, the sporting highs, but then real dark places as well. And the common theme for you has been the right, hanging around the right type of people, having a purpose. And the Ironman, when you said to me that you were, you've signed up to do an Ironman, I'm going, you've had a hip replacement, mate. Like, you're probably not going to make that. Like, I was,
Hey, you nearly got me out of it by making me play basketball and then tearing my PCL. You nearly stuffed up the plan.
Yeah, but seriously though, like your dedication and commitment, and a few of my friends are in that Ironman space, and said, "Oh, look," I said, "Look, you might not get through it with the greatest time ever, but I can near guarantee you'll get through it, because he's just like a warhorse, like someone that would just keep going and going and going." And you did get through that. But what was that experience like to throw yourself into an Ironman, where, for those that don't know the distances, how far do you swim, how far do you run, how far do you ride, and just share, what you went through to go through that?
Yeah, so it's a 3.8 kilometer swim, 180-kilometer bike ride, which is about 6 or 7 hours on a bike, and then a marathon, so 42 kilometers at the end. And I remember, I think, just having a goal. So I think after Maddie, we caught up for a 2K run, and I was still having the pity party, saying, "Look, I've had a hip replacement, I've lost my mate, I'm not allowed to run." The doctor said. So I was just using every excuse under the sun not to go for that first run. But we ended up going for about a 10K run. It started raining, and we're yelling at each other, and it sort of sparked something. And I think it was the next day I booked in for the half Ironman. My mates thought I was joking. They'd booked in. I'd sent them a screenshot, and we got through the half, and then I booked in the full. I said, I don't do things in halves. And then I hadn't booked it, and then my mates called me out and said, "Oh, you said you were going to do a full one." So I booked that, and they hadn't booked it. And then it got to when we played basketball, I hurt my knee with about 6 weeks out from the Ironman, and I couldn't walk. And it got to 2 weeks out, and my mate Matty, who I did the half Ironman with, he goes, "You can't do it. You can't run." And I said, "Well, what about if tomorrow I go for a 4K swim, a 100K bike ride, and I walk a marathon?" He goes, "Yeah, well, if you do that, I'll book it. I'll book it." So the next day I did that. And that was tough because my knee was aching, and I did the 4K swim. I've got a photo of myself after the 4K swim. I just looked like a nightmare. And the ride I got through, and I was delirious, and then walked through the night. I don't know what time I started, like 9 p.m. and I went for 7 hours. So I walked all through the night, delirious, but got there. And then Matty, man of his word, he signed up to the Ironman, I actually didn't think I'd make it. My goal was to make it without stopping or walking, but I didn't think I would make it. But on the day, the adrenaline was pumping. The camaraderie was there, being around other people that were going to go through the same hell as you, and it was just it was a great moment going across the line, and it sort of led to, I don't know, sparking something where I felt I can achieve, or I can get over physical things. So mentally, it sort of helped me mentally as well, and doing a bit of research on mindset, and I call my talk grit, but there's a direct correlation between getting over something hard physically and getting over something mentally. So I'm doing learning a lot about mental toughness and that at the moment. So it was a good journey, and it's led to us talking about it, and then obviously talking about my story. So it's been a roller coaster.
And we do want to, I guess, honor the time required to talk about grit, because it's a lot of value that people need to really understand, because most people have been going through challenges over the last few years. That we went through the lockdown era, there's health conditions, there's all sorts of different things. So we want to dedicate some more time to that. But, it's amazing to see you out there doing speaking gigs in front of, all sorts of different audiences, from sporting clubs to corporate. You were at the ANZ last week, football clubs, getting a lot of media attention for what you're doing. So well done for that. But at the end of every episode, I always ask every guest the same questions, which I call the rapid fire section. Not yes, no answers, but just I ask each guest the same question. So is there a book, or is there a content piece, whether it's a podcast or a video or something, that you would recommend for people if they want to sort of get out of the struggle of life to get ahead?
Yeah, I think I've listened to. I'm an audio man, but Atomic Habits I've just listened to recently, and my grit stuff. I've learned that everyone's got a story, and everyone, as you mentioned, is going to face hardship. So I think that building habits into your daily routine is vital. Even this morning, I found myself scrolling on social media for an hour before I got out of bed, and it was putting me in a bad mood. So I snapped out of it. I thought, I've got to get back to my habits here. I've got to make my bed, drink my lemon water, do some sit-ups, and and get out for a walk, which I've done, and it just made my mood go through the roof. So Atomic Habits I think is a real good one.
What about along your journey, a bit of advice that you think held you in good stead? So what would the best bit of advice be?
Effort beats talent. That's I can't remember who said that. Might have been my dad. But that's one of my themes in my grit talks is effort beats talent. So that's something that I think if you give 100% effort, you can see what your full potential is going to be. It's not all about skill and talent.
Well done. What about on the flip side? Is there any advice or just something you totally disagree with? It might be the concept of hustle harder, for example.
I think just failure is a good thing. I know I've done some talks to a lot of school kids, and they're all scared to fail. I think failure is when you learn the most. I've started a lot of businesses and failed a lot of businesses, but I think you fail forward. You try and learn from your mistakes, and that's not a bad thing as long as you're learning along the way, and that leads you to a good place. I think what's the saying? If one door closes, another one opens. I think so. Have a crack if people are out there and they want to have a crack, start a new business, sign up for a course, they want to learn how to write a book. There's steps, and just put some goals in place and have a crack. And if you fail, it's at least you don't die wondering.
Well said. What about you're in your 40s now. You've had a long career of life lessons. If there's something you would like to have told your 21-year-old self to make life, a little bit more easier or better, or just some real sound advice that you've learnt through experience that you think you would wish you knew that then?
Don't be such a dickhead. No, I think, I know body wise, I think it's when you get older, you start feeling the aches and pains. So I would have went back and listened to all the videos. Obviously, I was a football player, so I would have listened, because I always thought, I'm fine, I could run through brick walls. But treat the body like a temple. Don't wait until you're 44 to start looking after yourself. I think that's what I would have told my body. Now I wouldn't have so many aches and pains today.
Good advice. This podcast is called the One Shot Movement Podcast. It's about educating, empowering people to make the most of their one shot at life. There's somebody out there at the moment that may be struggling. They may be looking for an opportunity. They may be driving to work or on the train into work and going, look, I'm ready to make change in my life. What advice would you throw out there for somebody that's thinking like that?
Well, I think the main thing I've learned through doing these talks is everyone's got their own story, and there's a lot of people not speaking up. So I think sharing my story I've definitely got some phone calls and from people that I had no idea that were struggling. So if you are struggling, put your hand up. Use support, because it is hard battling things by yourself. So that's my main thing that I've enjoyed about these talks, is the feedback afterwards, and hearing different stories. And I think, geez, my story's not dissimilar to other stories, and obviously your story is ultimate. So just hearing that you're helping people speak up, and obviously all the statistics and the mental health these days is going through the roof. So if people ask for support, they can get through it better.
Yeah, well said. And I've been witness to that actually through a couple of our talks that we did together, just talking to the people after the events who are just going, wow, you guys are onto something here. Like, that was amazing. So, I've certainly witnessed it, and you've been doing a lot of talks these days. So well done for that. Now, on Grit, you've got an opportunity to share any websites. You want to direct people to your Instagram, give a bit more context to what you actually are out there doing. Feel free to share that with the audience.
Yeah, so I'm doing Grit talks, but I obviously want to share the message. Grit is a gratitude, resilience, initiative, and team. So I share different ways that I use each day on those topics. But you can contact me at stephen@buildgrit.com.au. Instagram is Stephen Baker and the number 10. And then there's a website, buildgrit.com.au as well. But the Instagram is probably the easiest way to get hold of me, Stephen Baker 10. Thank you.
From me. I want to thank you for taking the time. I know your story well, and we've been good friends, and you certainly inspire me for everything you've done as a footballer. You're rebounding back from some dark times, and going out there now to share your story with the world, which I think is a story that everyone needs to hear. So well done, Steve.
No, mate, thanks for having me, Craig. Love your work, mate.